Emma had it all: a luxury home just outside Geneva, 2 kids in private school, her own horse, skiing every winter and summers by the lake. On paper, it looked like the perfect expat life in Switzerland. But here's the twist. At 50, Emma's world turned upside down. After 20 years of marriage, she and her husband Mike decided to separate just as he was retiring. The income that had fueled their $350,000 a year lifestyle, it dropped by more than 80%. Emma received 1 million francs in the split, but here's the problem. That money wasn't meant for now. It had to last her through retirement. And suddenly she realized, even with 1 million, her financial future was anything but secure. Hi, I'm Aysha van der Peer. I'm a cross-border investment specialist in Zurich, Switzerland, with 20 years of experience in finance and a background that spans New York, Dubai, Amsterdam, Munich, and the UK. On this channel, we dive into the financial questions that matter most to high-earning expats and anyone managing their finances across several countries. I get messages all the time that some of you didn't realize that you didn't subscribe. So if you could do me a favor and double check you are subscribed to this channel, that would be tremendously appreciated. This is the simple, the free thing you can do if you have an interest in learning more about optimizing your finances as an expat to grow a large retirement portfolio. It also helps making sure I can keep the channel alive and continue to make the time to create these videos. So please double check if you are subscribed, and thank you so much. Emma is a Canadian expat. She moved in the year 2000 to Geneva, Switzerland, and at the time she was 30 and he was 44. When they moved, she first worked full-time as a project manager in Geneva for 2 years. And when they got their first child, she decreased her employment to 50%. And a couple of years later, when their second child was born, she left her job entirely and dedicated her time to her family. She definitely had enough to do. There was plenty to manage: the kids, the house. And eventually she also got to realize one of her dreams. She purchased a horse. Meanwhile, her husband Mike was progressing with his career and eventually making 350,000 Swiss francs per year. And they could live a nice life from this income. They had a nice house in Geneva. They were going to ski in the winter. They were going out for dinners. They just lived the life. And obviously she also had her horse, and she was able to dedicate a lot of her time and financial resources to her horse and related activities. Fast forward 20 years, Emma is 50, Mike is 64, and unfortunately their relationship has deteriorated over the years, and they decide to separate just as Mike is about to retire. And they go through a big surprise that in spite of his very nice salary and their very nice lifestyle, his retirement income will only be somehow 60,000 Swiss francs per year, which compares to the 350,000 he was making before, but was also made of bonuses and different conditions, and they didn't plan so well for retirement. And now the reality is that what he's entitled to at retirement drastically reduced to 60,000 a year. And yes, that's possible, even on such a high salary, because the way the Swiss system works is that the first pillar, ARAFA or AVS, the maximum pension you get from that is 29,000 per year. And that's only when you have contributed the full amount for your entire adult life. And so since they arrived in Switzerland when Mike was already in his 40s, he had many years of contributions. And the pension fund he had at his job was capped, which means only a portion of his salary was invested, grown, and considered for retirement benefits. Because both Mike and Emma lived a lavish lifestyle, an expensive lifestyle, they never really saved and invested to grow a large portfolio privately over the years. And what about Emma, you might ask? Will she get anything from the retirement system? Well, she only worked for 2 years in Switzerland, and then she stopped entirely. And so she will only get a very tiny fraction, a couple of hundreds, from the first pillar, ARAFA or AVS. And then you might ask, yes, but then she must be entitled to alimony from her husband. Well, the regulations in Switzerland is that alimony is dependent on the other spouse's ability to spend. And with Mike having his income reduced by 80% in retirement, there was just not enough or not much left to share with her. And for administrative reasons, they decide not to get formally divorced, but to formally separate. And luckily, they had a lump sum left, and they still have their kids in private school finishing their education. And so while their income is drastically lower, they still have these high tuition costs to cover. Now, fortunately, they still had some savings to use to guarantee that the kids can finish the private schooling, but obviously the situation is tight. And as part of the separation settlement, Emma receives 1 million in cash. Now, the issue is that if she uses this money now to finance her cost of living, she will have nothing when comes retirement. And so she actually needs to invest that 1 million and grow it as much as possible so that it can support her in retirement. That's all what she will have once she retires. That also means that she needs to get back to work. She literally doesn't have a choice, even after having lived such a luxury lifestyle for so many years. Because currently, if she wanted to live from her portfolio to ensure that the portfolio lasts a long time, she would only be able to withdraw about 30,000, max 40,000 per year. And then still she would run the risk of potentially not having enough money to last her entire life. And so she needs to first drastically reduce her lifestyle, reduce her spending, probably sell her horse, sell her house, and get back to work so that she can support herself now and let her portfolio grow to have more financial security in retirement. Now Emma is completely on her own, and her financial security currently, in the midterm future and in the long term true retirement, depends entirely on the financial decisions that she makes now. Unfortunately, Emma's story is not rare. I see it over and over. It keeps happening with expats in one form or the other. Usually the wife reduces the employment or stop altogether to care for the family. It feels fine as long as the partner's salary is flowing, but behind the scenes, pension contribution stops, savings don't grow, not much or nothing gets invested, and financial security and independence gradually slips away. And then one day, at retirement or at separation time, the gap shows up, and by that time, it's too late to change the past and do much about it. Don't let that happen to you. Check your pension certificates and your first pillar contributions to understand what you will be entitled when you retire from your own working contribution, from your spouse contributions. You need to understand the system to have an idea of how exposed you are, how financially secure you are, and how your retirement will look like whether you stay married or whether you separate. And most importantly, you need to save and invest and build a portfolio for yourself, no matter what your life situation is and how old you are. Don't wait until separation or retirement to find out the truth. Start today. Even small steps add up, and your future self will thank you. And so will everyone who depends on you. And if you want more tips, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. I will create many more videos like this about the financial challenges that high-earning expats and those otherwise living in a multi-country context face. And I definitely want to share cross-border info that's available nowhere else. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.